Welcome everyone. My name is Jen Kelly and I am the CityLAB coordinator with the City of Hamilton. This is currently our 6th online matchmaker session. To check out the rest of our sessions and challenges, you can check out the links below. Today we have Christine McKay from City Housing Hamilton, who will be telling us about her 2 challenges. The first, Revamp the Resident Handbook, and the second, Furniture Bank for City Housing Hamilton tenants. So first, Christine, if you could tell us a bit about your role at the city and why this sort of work is important.
Sure, thank you. I have a tendency to ramble on, so I'll keep it super short. My name is Christine. I've worked with City Housing now. I've been a tenant support worker for 2 years. My role as a tenant support worker is to connect, my emails noises are popping up, apologies everyone, is to connect tenants to support services. So a bit of a brokerage for tenants who maybe have difficulty connecting with social services. That can be if they're having health challenges, financial issues, need a doctor, need help filling out paperwork. Honestly, it's a really long list, and the short version is if it's nobody else's job, it's my job. So I'm at a ratio of about 800 tenants to 1 of me. So sometimes that can be a little bit challenging. Right now, our city housing offices are not open to the public or to our tenants for the most part. However, we are still working. I'm still going into my buildings. This is just an aside, not necessarily part of my role, but some people, I thought maybe you'd be interested. I am still going into our buildings about 2 or 3 times of a week, and the rest I'm working remotely from home. So I'm not new to the City of Hamilton. I'm pretty new to my role at City Housing. 2 years isn't that long. I was with Ontario Works for about 15 years before that in the addiction services, the newcomers to Canada team, youth team, so ages 16, 17, and with folks in the process of applying for ODSP as well. So really my background and why these projects are important to me, my whole work and whole career has been helping and supporting other people and trying to do the best I can to make sure that they're happy, healthy, and safe. And that kind of really summarizes my role at City Housing, is making sure people are happy, healthy, and safe in the placements they're at. That's the short version. Did you want me to start, Jen? Just a thumbs up. Do you want me to start with the handbook?
No, that's incredible. And honestly, it's a very important role that you play for so many people. And like you even said, it's 800 to 1. So what you do, I think, kind of speaks for itself into how important it is. Yeah, so we can start with the handbook. And so if you could guide us through your CityLAB challenge and the relevant background, the key problem you're looking to help with, basically, we can get started through that. And that would be great. Yeah.
Sure. So both of our challenges are things that really need to be done. The issue is, like a lot of social service agencies, public funded things, we have a shortage of staff and we don't have enough staff resources to actually get these projects going, which is why we're really hoping to have some students connect and support us in these. So the first one, the resident handbook. Anytime a new tenant comes in, they come into the office and they sit down and they sign a lease agreement. The whole process of signing a lease agreement takes about an hour. It's really long, it's really detailed. Anybody who's going through a lease signing as a new tenant is getting so much information in that 1 hour, and people walk away feeling really overwhelmed. You can't not, just so much information. So we do have a resident handbook that kind of gives some of the services that City Housing provides, gives some contact information, some really basic information about processes. The problem is, so we want people to walk away with something. So they kind of, at the end of that meeting, go, all right, you know what? I'm going to remember these few key things, but if I can't remember, I can pull out this resident handbook and I can go over everything later. The resident handbook is so out of date. That information really needs to be thoroughly reviewed, revamped. Is the information in it still relevant? Is that the information that our tenants want to see or need to see, or is there something else completely different that needs to be added in there? So that is one of the big projects that needs to be done. A lot of that particular project could involve researching, one, to make sure what we have in that handbook is relevant. Two, it would probably be helpful to actually engage our tenants to have a look. Some of them may go, what, you have a resident handbook? They may not even know. So to engage, you know what, do you find this helpful? If not, what would you like to see? And for people who don't see the handbook or haven't seen that handbook, maybe they can review it for us and let us know. We need to do a better job. If they don't know what the resident's handbook is, we need to do a better job at making sure that that gets out to everybody. So there could be kind of an interview piece of it. Like everybody, I'm sure with the schools too, I don't know if it's going to be remote come September or not. But both of these projects, the research component of it could very easily be done in a remote capacity. It could all, should things change and open up, absolutely, we could also get people connected with our tenants in person, which would be fantastic as well. So these projects, they're really great for that, is that they could be done either way. So that's the resident handbook in a super fast nutshell. Is that okay? Or did you have some more questions, Jen, or anybody else?
Yeah, no, I think that's wonderful. I think there's a lot of opportunities there for students to work on that project, like you said, remotely or in person as well. I guess one of my questions would be, because the handbook is so out of date, you mentioned speaking to potential tenants. And so my question from that stems of getting into contact with tenants. So I'm guessing you would be kind of that connection there for students to get in contact with tenants to possibly get feedback on Resident Handbook renewal? Okay, yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. So for either one of the projects, if anybody is interested and wants to pick them up, I'm happy to be the main contact and have students engage with me directly. Maybe one per group. So I've worked with CityLAB and Redeemer last semester, and what worked out really well is if one person is kind of the spokesperson for the group, I'm happy to field any questions. I remember it may not be feasible again come September or January or whenever, but I met the students and we did tours of some of the buildings so they could kind of get an idea. They also, I set them up with going in actually into the buildings, trying to engage with tenants as well, to do kind of some research and information gathering. So yes, absolutely, I'm happy to be a contact person.
Perfect. I think that would be really useful for students to engage in the city and engage with the tenants and get the tenant feedback on that too. So I think that's a great connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, you've already elaborated a little bit on how you see students getting involved. So did you want to maybe just go over a little bit more so specifically, like kind of the big takeaways that you think that students could be involved? Just kind of highlight that a little bit. So yeah, like you said, major research, that sort of thing.
Yeah, a lot of it's going to be research. They're going to have to connect with staff as well. So not only tenants, but I would love to see the students engaging with various members. So City Housing is a big organization. I'm just guessing at this. I think we probably have about 120 different staff in different areas. So finance, rent calculations, property managers, lots of things. So probably getting some information from various sections about staff would be great as well, to gather information, because I bet a lot of staff probably have some really valuable feedback to offer. So a lot of it would be engaging, gathering information, reviewing the information that's there. The potential is also there to review if there are other housing providers outside of Hamilton that offer something similar, to see what they're doing and figure out maybe some best practices that we can be incorporating as well. So that can be another research component as well. Yeah. I mean, the reality is, if they've got time and resources, write the whole thing for us. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Yeah, right.
So I don't know what format they've got it in right now. I would have to figure that out. I don't know if they use Publisher or whatever, but we could figure that out if it comes down to it. And, you know, it could even come down to pictures and tenants, maybe photos, that kind of thing. You know, it could really go a lot of different directions, and there's a lot of different opportunities and possibilities.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think there's a lot of different opportunities for students there from also a bunch of different like backgrounds and faculties as well. I think that's great. So you also have, so that was for Revamp, the Tenant Handbook. So would you want to go into your other project now, that, so you have two projects? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So The furniture bank. So what I didn't give, I made a lot of assumptions here that everybody knows what city housing is, and I apologize for that wholeheartedly. I should. So we are a branch of the City of Hamilton. City Housing is the #1 largest housing provider in the City of Hamilton. We have about 7,000 tenants across the city. Most of them are living in apartments. There are a few townhouses and a few single housing dwellings. So the majority of our units are geared to income. So it is based on our tenants' income, what the rental amount would be. And some of them are market rent. And when I say market rent, they're not really market rent based on what you would find at, say, Effort Trust or somewhere else. They're still a lot more affordable market rent. One of the unfortunate realities about housing, and this is not just within the city of Hamilton, it's province-wide and even larger, is that there is a huge demand for it and not enough supply. So there is an extensive waiting list for the application to get geared to income rent. Sometimes it can be up to 7 years, depending on family size and what you're looking for. So there's a huge need and a huge importance for these kind of units, and there absolutely are not enough to accommodate the need. So apologies again, I should have led with that, so I'm so sorry for that. So the furniture bank. So when we see some of our tenants come in and they make it through the application and they come up and we offer them a unit. Some of them may be coming from shelters, homeless, fleeing abuse, victims of abuse, and they may be coming in and moving in with absolutely nothing. So while it's fantastic that we are able to offer them a unit, when you come in with nothing, no bed, no anything, it makes it incredibly difficult and challenging for folks. So what we want to do is to create some kind of a furniture donation bank. We have a really large storage room that is in one of our downtown buildings in the basement, and we have a few things in there. It's terribly organized. Nobody knows what's in it. Somebody has the key. I don't know. So we were really trying to get this going and organized, because we really want to be able to offer tenants in situations where they're moving in with nothing, some basic essentials, you know, a bed, a chair, some cutlery, you know, some towels, things like that, like really basic essentials that when you're living on a fixed income it's impossible to gather all of those things, especially at once. So we really wanted to have donations, because periodically staff will donate things or we'll get donations from other places. We don't know how to organize it. We don't know how to store it, how to access it. How do we give our tenants access to that? And how do we do that in a safe and organized manner? So this is something that we really want to see get going. And while the storage is going to be in one particular building, we would love for it to be anybody, any tenant that requires it could have access. So some of the logistics that we need to worry about and think about, what kind of donations can we accept? Unfortunately, a lot of our buildings, and not just our buildings, City of Hamilton has a huge pest control issue, bed bugs, cockroaches, that kind of thing. So we need to take that into consideration when we're accepting things. Are they clean? Are they safe? And just because they arrive that way doesn't mean they're going to stay that way. So we need to make sure that things are properly stored. So really some best practices on what is acceptable, what isn't, how do we determine that, how do we store them, how do we kind of organize and create an inventory so everybody knows who's there, how do we get our tenants access, that sort of thing. So that's the short version on that one. That one's a really, really important one for us that we would love to, I mean, they're both really important, but we'd love to see this one up and going. And again, it's one of those things that we just don't have the resources, staff resources, to kind of get this project going. So any assistance we can get with that would be amazing.
Yeah, again, I think, like you said, a very valuable project. I also am already just envisioning some sort of like business students wanting to dive into this and be like, okay, how can we run this sort of like that? Or some like health science students who are focused on like everything going on with COVID and even their process of going through like sanitation and checking and that sort of thing. So I see a lot of opportunities, again, for a lot of different types of students. So I guess my follow-up question is just sort of, could you go into the details of maybe, yeah, specifically what would be those deliverables. So again, like we had research and stuff on the first one. So
Yep.
potentially, yeah, like I think there was like a project plan in the deliverables. There again would be research components to it as well. And like a design was one of the options I think that was selected as well. So maybe just go into a little bit more details of the specifics of that you could look for
Sure.
types of students.
Yeah, again, yeah, you're right. Part of it is going to be research again, because off the top of my head, I couldn't for the life of me, aside from things like dishes and cutlery, what kind of things should we take? What is able to be cleaned? I mean, obviously lots of agencies do this. What are they doing? How do they make sure, and how do they manage it? So some research on best practices across other agencies would be really important for this. Planning in terms of actual use of space, how big is the space? Is there money can we organize this? Do we need shelves? The inventory piece of it. So there could be, a computer kind of aspect to it, right? As well. How do we get our inventory online so everybody has access to it? How do we keep that updated so it is easily maintainable? And the human services aspect of it as well, how are we getting people what they need in a safe way, and how do they feel supported, and how do they figure out that this program exists? Do we advertise? Who's going to be the contact person? It'll be a staff person, of course, on an ongoing basis. A lot of it is researching and planning and creating some kind of inventory process as well. For that particular, I would love to see a written process too. So if I, for example, I'm not saying I'm going to manage it, but let's say I was, and then the next day I'm not here. Well, I would love for there to be a written process involved so anybody can pick this up and keep it going regardless of who is currently working there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I think it would be good to get into a process that can run itself too, just because it seems like it's such a necessity that you want it to not be relying solely on like one person's kind of attendance. You would like for it to be able to run itself just so people can get the sort of things that they need when they need them, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us the outline of both those projects.